Welcome to Lesson 5, where we'll take a look at using a scientific search strategy instead of the common approach, which is just kind of doing a random Google search where people are doing their own research. And what we'll do is we will PubMed a search or PubMed Central a search. And I'll explain that. And I hope you enjoy it and find it useful. What we want to do is get familiar with PubMeding a Google search. And the purpose is to narrow the search down to peer-reviewed literature sources. So we discussed in the previous lesson that peer review is important for making sure that information is rigorous in terms of its scientific grounding. And so when you do a Google search and you do not attach any sort of modifier to it, what ends up happening is Google will spit up the most popular or most frequently visited search results. And not only that, but it will tailor those searches to how it's surveilled your personal habits as far as browsing goes. So neither of those things are going to end up giving you particularly scientific results. So one of the simplest ways that you can make a search scientific is by adding the term PubMed to it. And if you want to limit your search results to free full text instead of, abstracts that also have a lot of them have a paywall to get to the full text of the article, then you can attach the term PubMed Central to your Google search. And you can also do these same types of searches in Google Scholar. Google Scholar it's almost a matter of taste how you do that search. And if you do a Google Scholar search, make sure that you exclude court documents and things of that nature during the search so you have less noise to sift through. Now, there is a particular set of operators or modifiers that you can use in a scientific search, and these are called Boolean operators. There is the Boolean and, or, and not. And these operators are things that you type in caps in order to indicate that they are a search modifier. And something that I found out pretty recently that actually only occurred within the last few years, if I am correct on this, Google searches automatically use the so-called Boolean and. And what the Boolean and operator does is it narrows searches down to terms that are both included in the search. So I'll give you an example. If you were to do a Google search on creatine supplementation, that's the search term, then the results that would come up automatically link only searches that include both the terms creatine and supplementation. Okay, so the Boolean and operator narrows down search results. So if you were to use the Boolean or, that would broaden searches since it would include, like, if you were to do a Boolean search with creatine or supplementation, then you would have a bunch of search results that don't necessarily join those two terms. So you have an extra amount of results to sift through. So there's also the Boolean not operator, and it excludes specific terms that you do not want in the search results that would maybe have a tendency to be in the search results, and you don't want them there, so you can use that operator. But with all of that said, it is the Boolean and that I have personally found to be the most frequent Boolean operator that I've used to narrow search results. But ever since Google as well as PubMed automatically use the Boolean and. You simply don't have to type it. So it's a lot easier to understand when I go through this example versus reading the details of it. So let's do exactly that. And let's have some fun and use a claim that I come across regularly. So, a particular media figure, we'll call it a physician, made the claim that, and this was on YouTube, and this is a commercial that was circulating with a pretty high degree of regularity at the time that I was putting this module together. So I just happened to use that. Okay, the claim is oats are loaded with lectins, which can poke holes in your gut lining and cause serious health issues down the line. And then the other claim was oats absolutely make you fat for the winter. Okay, so let's use some scientific search strategies to investigate these claims. Why don't we start with the oats are loaded with lectins claim? Okay, so I'm going to pop that open. And let's go with oats and gut health, but instead of doing a random Google search without a scientific modifying term, let's just add the word PubMed to this search. So PubMed, let's say oats, gut health, and why don't we narrow the search even further? Let's see if we can find a systematic review on this. Let's see what we get. Okay, so we've got a relatively recent systematic review of the effects of oat intake on gastrointestinal health. So if you're really interested in finding out and getting the details of this particular systematic review, then you would go over to the full text. But in the interest of time, let's scan the abstract. It doesn't hurt to read the abstract before you go into the details of the article. But the conclusions are oat intake was associated with the increase of beneficial bacterial groups in individuals with GI disease and those with celiac disease. Most studies showed no change in GI symptoms with oat consumption. All right. So this systematic review, well, let's see, it included, all right, so it included 23 randomized controlled trials, 21 non-randomized controlled trials, and 8 observational studies and 32 in vitro studies. So it was a fairly large systematic review. And they essentially concluded the exact opposite of the claim that was made related to oats ruining gut health. Okay, they even to boot, they didn't find any adverse effects even in individuals with pre-existing disease, celiac disease. So oats are apparently very unoffensive as far as the foods go that can wreck your gut. So let's do the same thing with how about this? Oats absolutely make you fat for the winter. So let's do a search and put some scientific flavor into that search. So here we are at Google. And I'm going to go PubMed. And I'm going to go, how about we just do oats and body weight? And let's not make it a systematic review. Let's see if we can pull up a narrative review or who knows, we might get a nice randomized controlled trial. This happens to be, let's see, well, the first search result, recent one, 2023, impact of oats on appetite, hormones, and body weight management. And once again, you can read the abstract, great, but what you do want to do ultimately, if you're doing a deep dive on these kind of things, you want to read the full text. So this happens to be a narrative review on this topic. And if we just sort of pan down and just see what they found, kind of once again in the interest of time. All right, so hence several clinical studies supported oats utilization against obesity, appetite hormones, and energy regulation, but still some studies have shown no or little significance on appetite. Results of various studies revealed the therapeutic potential of oats for body weight management, appetite control, strengthening the immune system, lowering serum cholesterol, and gut microbiota promotion by increased production of short-chain fatty acids. That does not look to me that oats, on balance, per the weight of the evidence, are going to, in quotes, absolutely make you fat for the winter. In fact, the evidence apparently indicates the opposite, as shown by their conclusion that utilization of, or studies supported oats utilization against obesity. Okay, so oats apparently have an anti-obesogenic effect, and I want to emphasize that if you want to get into the details of how they arrived at that conclusion, then read the full text and make a final judgment call, or at least file it into your collection of information gathering. But thus far, it genuinely looks like this person's claims are the opposite of what the actual research evidence is saying. Surprise, surprise. Well, that ends the lesson on a scientific search. The next lesson will be attaining a scientific mindset or attitude or a scientific ethos. But I want to mention that I provided a resource in the downloads section that you can refer to, where you can take a much deeper dive into scientific search strategies as well as research methodology. I will provide the links there in the resource. So enjoy that, and I will see you back for lesson 6.